It was a rainy October evening when I decided to try out a new online shopping website that had been gaining popularity. The site, called Mystery Shop, promised unique and exclusive items at unbeatable prices. The interface was sleek and enticing, and I found myself scrolling through pages of bizarre and fascinating products. One item caught my eye: an antique porcelain doll. The description was minimal, but the photo showed a doll with an eerie, almost lifelike gaze. Without thinking too much about it, I added it to my cart and completed the purchase. The confirmation email arrived instantly, but it was strangely vague, stating only that my item would be delivered soon. A few days later, a plain, unmarked box arrived at my doorstep. I eagerly brought it inside and opened it. Inside was the porcelain doll, wrapped in old, yellowed newspaper. As I lifted it out, a cold shiver ran down my spine. The doll was even more unsettling in person, with eyes that seemed to follow me around the room. That night, as I was about to go to bed, I decided to place the doll on a shelf in my living room. I turned off the lights and went upstairs, but sleep didn't come easily. I kept thinking about the doll's eyes and the way they seemed so real. Around midnight, I was jolted awake by a loud thud. Heart pounding, I went downstairs to investigate. The doll was no longer on the shelf. Instead, it was lying in the middle of the living room floor facing the stairs. I told myself it must have fallen, though the shelf wasn't very high. I picked it up and placed it back on the shelf, making sure it was secure. I went back to bed, but a sense of unease lingered. At 3 a.m., I was awakened again, this time by the sound of footsteps. They were soft, almost imperceptible, but unmistakable. I crept downstairs, holding my breath. The doll was once again on the floor, this time closer to the stairs. A cold dread settled over me as I realized there was no way it could have moved on its own. I picked it up with trembling hands and, for lack of a better idea, put it in a closet and locked the door. The next day, I called Mystery Shop customer service, but the line was disconnected. Their website was down, and there were no records of the transaction in my email or bank statements. It was as if the purchase had never happened. Determined to get rid of the doll, I decided to throw it away. I took it to the local dump, watching as it was buried under piles of garbage. I felt a strange sense of relief as I drove away, thinking it was finally over. That night, I heard the footsteps again. This time they were louder, more deliberate. I froze in bed, listening as they approached my bedroom door. The door creaked open, and I felt a cold breath on my neck. Slowly, I turned around, and there it was, the doll, sitting on my nightstand, its eyes glinting in the darkness. Panic set in as I grabbed the doll and threw it across the room. It hit the wall and shattered into pieces. But as I stared at the broken fragments, a chilling realization dawned on me. From within the shattered porcelain, a small piece of paper fluttered out. I picked it up with shaking hands and read the message scrawled in blood-red ink. "You can't get rid of me." Terrified, I spent the rest of the night in my car, parked in the driveway. The next morning, I contacted a local paranormal expert, hoping for answers. She listened to my story and then said something that made my blood run cold. "Some objects," she explained, "are bound to their owners by a malevolent spirit. Destroying the object can sometimes release the spirit, making it even more dangerous." Desperate, I asked her what I could do. She advised me to perform a cleansing ritual and then bury the doll's remains in consecrated ground. That evening, we carried out the ritual together. The atmosphere was tense, and as we chanted, I felt an oppressive presence in the room. Finally, we buried the remains in a churchyard, hoping to put an end to the nightmare. The footsteps stopped, and for a while, I felt a sense of peace returning to my life. But even now, sometimes in the dead of night, I think I hear the faint sound of footsteps, and the doll's lifelike eyes haunt my dreams. Mystery Shop has vanished without a trace, and I can't help but wonder how many others have fallen victim to its cursed items. Shopping online has never felt the same, and I know deep down that the horror of that night will stay with me forever. It was a chilly October evening when I stumbled upon a peculiar online marketplace called Dark Finds. Intrigued by the promise of rare and obscure items, I decided to browse through its listings. The site had a vintage, almost eerie feel to it, with dimly lit product photos and cryptic descriptions. One item in particular caught my attention: a handcrafted wooden music box. The description claimed it was a unique piece from the early 1900s, with an intricate design and a hauntingly beautiful melody. Without thinking twice, I added it to my cart and completed the purchase. The confirmation email I received was strange. It contained no shipping details, only the message, "Your item will find you." A few days later, as I was coming home from work, I found a small unmarked package on my doorstep. There was no return address, but I knew it had to be the music box. I brought it inside and carefully unwrapped it. The box was even more exquisite than I had imagined, with delicate carvings and an aura of antiquity. Eager to hear the melody, I wound it up and opened the lid. The music that emanated from the box was enchanting, but there was something unsettling about it. It was a slow, melancholic tune that seemed to resonate deep within me. As the music played, I felt a chill in the air, and the shadows in the room seemed to grow darker. That night, I woke up around 3 a.m. to the sound of the music box playing by itself. Confused and a bit frightened, I went to the living room and saw the box open, the melody drifting through the silence. I knew I had closed it before going to bed. I shut the lid again, making sure it was tightly closed, and returned to my bedroom. Over the next few days, strange things started happening. I would find the music box open in different parts of the house, always playing its haunting tune. Objects would move on their own, and I felt an ever-growing sense of dread. One night, as I was lying in bed, I heard whispers accompanying the melody. They were faint, almost imperceptible, but undeniably there. Terrified, I decided to get rid of the music box. I took it to a local antique shop, hoping to sell it. The shop owner, an elderly man with a serious demeanor, took one look at the box and his face turned pale. "Where did you get this?" he asked, his voice trembling. I explained about the online marketplace, and his expression grew graver. He told me the box was cursed, created by a grief-stricken artisan who had lost his family in a tragic accident. The melody was said to be a lament for their souls, and anyone who owned the box would be haunted by their restless spirits. Desperate, I asked him what I could do to break the curse. He suggested that I take the box to the place where it was originally crafted, a small abandoned workshop on the outskirts of town, and perform a ritual to appease the spirits. That night, I drove to the old workshop, a dilapidated building that looked like it hadn't been touched in decades. Inside, the air was thick with dust and decay. I placed the music box on a workbench and followed the ritual instructions the shop owner had given me. As I chanted the incantations, the room grew colder, and the shadows seemed to move on their own. The music box began to play on its own, and the whispers grew louder, filling the room with a cacophony of mournful voices. Just as I was about to finish the ritual, the lid of the box slammed shut, and the whispers stopped. The air became still, and an eerie silence fell over the workshop. I quickly left the building, leaving the music box behind. When I returned home, the atmosphere felt lighter, and the sense of dread that had been plaguing me was gone. The following days were peaceful, and I hoped the nightmare was finally over. However, one evening, as I was preparing for bed, I heard a familiar melody drifting through the air. My heart sank as I realized it was the same haunting tune from the music box. I followed the sound to my living room, where I found the box, pristine and unopened, sitting on the coffee table. A message was carved into the wood, words that made my blood run cold. "You can never escape the music." The box had found its way back to me, and I knew then that the curse was far from broken. The music box, with its haunting melody and restless spirits, would remain a part of my life, a constant reminder that some things bought online come with a price far greater than money. It was a gloomy November evening when I discovered an obscure website called Echo Bay, claiming to offer rare and unique items. The site's design was archaic, with pixelated images and an old-fashioned layout, but something about it drew me in. I browsed through pages of unusual artifacts and antiques until I found a vintage mirror with an intricately carved wooden frame. The description was vague but enticing. "This mirror shows more than just your reflection." Intrigued by the cryptic message, I decided to buy it. The checkout process was bizarre. There was no shipping information or delivery date, only a confirmation that my item was on its way. A few days later, a heavy package arrived at my door, wrapped in layers of old, tattered cloth. I brought it inside and unwrapped it, revealing the mirror. It was beautiful, but had an unsettling aura. The glass was slightly tarnished, giving my reflection a ghostly hue. That night, I hung the mirror in my bedroom. As I was getting ready for bed, I caught a glimpse of something unusual in the reflection. It was faint, but I thought I saw a shadowy figure standing behind me. I spun around, but there was nothing there. Shaking it off as my imagination, I went to sleep. Around 2 a.m., I was awoken by a cold breeze. My bedroom window was closed, and there was no draft. I glanced at the mirror and saw the shadowy figure again, clearer this time. It was a tall, dark silhouette, motionless. My heart pounded as I looked behind me, but the room was empty. Terrified, I covered the mirror with a sheet and tried to go back to sleep. The next morning, I decided to move the mirror to the attic. As I carried it up the stairs, I felt its weight increase, as if something was resisting. I placed it in a corner of the attic, draped a cloth over it, and shut the door firmly. For a few nights, things were quiet, and I thought I was free of whatever haunted the mirror. But soon, I began hearing strange noises from the attic. Whispers, footsteps, and occasionally a soft, eerie humming. I tried to ignore it, but the sounds grew louder and more insistent. One night, unable to take it any longer, I decided to confront whatever was in the attic. Armed with a flashlight, I climbed the stairs, each step echoing ominously. I pushed open the attic door and shone the light around. The room was as I had left it, except the cloth had been removed from the mirror, which now stood exposed. As I approached the mirror, the air grew colder. I saw my reflection, but behind me stood the shadowy figure, clearer than ever. It was no longer just a silhouette, it had features, a gaunt face with hollow eyes and a sinister grin. My reflection remained normal, but the figure's eyes were fixed on me. Panicking, I turned to run, but the attic door slammed shut. The figure in the mirror stepped closer, its grin widening. I screamed, banging on the door, but it wouldn't budge. The figure raised a hand, and I felt a cold grip on my shoulder. I turned back to the mirror and saw its hand on me, though nothing was there in reality. Desperate, I grabbed an old sheet and threw it over the mirror. The grip loosened, and the room fell silent. I stumbled out of the attic, locking the door behind me, and called a friend who was knowledgeable about the paranormal. When he arrived, he examined the mirror and confirmed my worst fears. The mirror was a portal, a gateway for the spirit trapped within to cross over. The only way to stop it was to destroy the mirror completely. Together, we took the mirror outside and smashed it to pieces, burning the wooden frame. As the glass shattered, a wail echoed through the night, and a dark mist rose from the fragments, dissipating into the air. After that night, the noises stopped, and the eerie presence was gone. I deleted my account on Echo Bay and warned others about the site, hoping no one else would fall victim to its cursed items. Yet every now and then, I can't shake the feeling of being watched, and sometimes, in reflective surfaces, I catch a glimpse of a shadow that shouldn't be there. The mirror was destroyed, but part of its dark energy seems to have lingered, a reminder of the horrors hidden in the world of online shopping.